Good morning and welcome to Willie's Firewood. The sun's not up yet, but I bet Gramp is. I told him 6 a.m. we would start at the new Woodyard. It's 5:30. Let's go see how much he's got done ahead of us when we get there. I'm betting it'll probably be a bit. Seems a little different to me to have to be traveling to go do firewood because everything that we've done out of this small yard here for the last 13 years. So this is something new. Eventually, it'll be our new home will be moved in over there, which will probably happen in a couple of weeks. But for now, we're gonna go over and we're gonna see what Gramp's up to. So take us about 10 minutes to get there, and we'll see you when we get over there. I thought of something else too, because I saw my Echo hat. If you guys are looking for Husky, Echo, or Stihl chainsaws, sawsuppliers.com has got some of the best prices, hands down. If you use my coupon code down below, Willie10, get 10% off and free shipping. I haven't heard from anybody yet that said they could find a better deal somewhere else. So if you're in the market for a new chainsaw, backpack blower, string trimmer, all of those, 10% off, free shipping, Husky, Echo, and Stihl. They're adding more Stihl chainsaws to the lineup all the time for you guys that like Stihl. And you can still get the legendary 3 Series saws, so you can get a 372, a 395, a 3120. All of those are available right at sawsuppliers.com. All right, guys, we're driving into the Woodyard. Gramp's here already. He's ahead of us, but he's not ahead of us by much. So getting here a little bit early was a good thing. So let's go get stacking with Gramp and let's start cutting.
Closer than that, you know he's gonna be carrying it.
Yeah, he stacked it low.
Yes, he did. Should have a skid out on this end.
He put a bunch extra under because he knew it was going to lay out, but he couldn't reach all the way to the end out here. We'll have to, once you get them cut off the last skid, I can flop them back or something, but they didn't get much gravel yesterday. They must not have hauled very long. So about 3.5 tanks of gas and a little man glitter in our beard. Well, whatever, leave it. But we've got the new Woodyard looking kind of like a Woodyard now. Let's show you. We've got some sawdust on the ground, a nice row of rounds, and over on this other side, we've started on our next row in the front there. So by the time we get these ones evened up with the rest of the tree length, we should have most of a second row there. But Gramp and I, we've made some decisions, so let's talk about that. So we want to lay the wood the opposite way, because if I put the splitter in between and we cut from both sides, I can make an alley and I can go down through. With the wood stacked this way, I can't do that because we're stacking in to the short end of the yard. But if we flip everything around, so that the rows are going this way, I can drive right down through the center of the yard and come out the other side with the splitter. So like I told you guys all from the start, it's gonna be a work in progress. I kind of thought that this might be the better way to do it, but after we started cutting this morning, Gramp and I both agreed, nope, needs to be the other way. So we'll change it, but we've got to get back and get ready to split because Kevin should be at the house in a minute. We've got to work on that 5-cord order. So, did we do it? Not quite. Let me spin you around and show you. We have about 1/3 to 1/2 of a cord of firewood left in the yard. That's it. This one's a wrap. We're moving the splitter in the morning. We got 3.5 of our 5 cords done. With skies and sunset like that, that tells me 2 things. 1, it's getting late, and 2, God is good. This yard served us really well for a long time. I can't wait to see what the future holds. I know what I've got for plans, but you guys don't. So we're gonna try to push and we're gonna see what we can do. And I think it's gonna be a really fun and exciting ride. So, not a bad day. We christened the new yard. We almost got the old yard all cleaned up except for that. So, it's time to move some equipment. That Cord King's hungry and we're busy. So it needs to make some orders come out of that yard. And that all wood right there, that's the fastest way to move firewood, period, with a commercial log splitter. So let's get everything moved. Remember guys, a little bit every day goes a long way. Help someone if you can. We've got some really exciting stuff coming. We'll show every bit of it to you guys as it gets here and as we get using it.